Right now, if you got a bird feeder or a bag of peanuts anywhere near your back door, there's a squirrel out there who has rearranged its entire day around you, and not in the sweet way you think. It's not visiting your yard anymore. It's waiting outside it, watching the door, timing your footsteps, and treating that little pile of peanuts like the only meal that matters. Even when the world around it is full of better food it stopped bothering to look for. This is NutriPause, and today we're talking about something a lot of backyard feeders don't want to hear. 2 of the 8 signs coming up are ones almost nobody catches until the squirrel is already in trouble. And one of them has to do with something you'll actually see happening on your porch railing this week, if you look closely enough. Let's start with the first sign, and it's the one most people brush off as cute. Your squirrel shows up the second you open the door, before you've even set anything down. Not when it smells food. Not when it sees the bag. The second the door creaks. That's not curiosity, that's conditioning, and it happens fast with squirrels because their brains are wired for exactly this kind of pattern learning, the same wiring that lets them remember thousands of cache locations across a single season. Wildlife rehabilitators who work with orphaned and injured squirrels have long pointed out that peanuts are essentially candy to these animals. High in fat, low in the calcium and micronutrients a squirrel actually needs to keep its bones and teeth healthy. When a squirrel starts responding to the sound of a door instead of the presence of food, it's telling you the reward pathway has already been rewired around you specifically, not around foraging. Try this tomorrow. Don't open the door right away. Wait 2 or 3 minutes after you'd normally step outside and just watch through the window. If that squirrel is pacing, chattering, or staring at the door the entire time, you're not looking at a wild forager anymore. You're looking at an animal that has quietly become dependent on a single unreliable source. And unreliable because it's you, and you don't work on a schedule a squirrel could survive on. The second sign shows up in what your squirrel is choosing to ignore. Look around your yard right now. Are there acorns, walnuts, seed pods, even other feeders nearby? A healthy, food-secure squirrel forages opportunistically, sampling a wide range of things because its body actually needs that range: calcium from certain nuts and plant matter, protein from insects and fungi, fiber from bark and buds. But a squirrel that's become peanut fixated will walk right past a perfectly good acorn to sit at your railing and wait. State wildlife agencies that publish backyard feeding guidance consistently flag this exact behavior. Animals narrowing their diet around an artificial food source instead of using it as a supplement. Try this tomorrow. Scatter a small handful of natural forage nearby, whatever's locally available alongside your usual peanuts, and just watch which one gets investigated first. If the peanuts win every single time, even when they're farther away, that's not preference anymore. That's a habit that's overridden instinct, and instincts that get overridden don't always come back on their own. Sign 3 is one you can actually feel if you've ever tried to stop feeding for even a few days. The squirrel gets agitated. Not just hungry looking, but genuinely stressed, more vocal, more erratic in its movement, sometimes approaching closer than it normally would, almost frantic. Wildlife veterinarians who treat backyard wildlife describe this kind of behavioral shift as a red flag for nutritional dependency. Because a squirrel with a diverse natural diet doesn't panic over one missed feeding, it just moves on and forages elsewhere. But a squirrel whose fat intake and blood sugar patterns have been built around a steady peanut supply can genuinely struggle when that supply disappears in a way that looks a lot like withdrawal because functionally it kind of is. Try this yourself. The next time you're running late, or just forget, watch how long it takes for that squirrel to settle down and start foraging elsewhere instead of sitting at your door. If it's pacing for 20 minutes, chattering at you through the glass, that's not personality. That's a nervous system that's been trained to expect something it now physiologically anticipates. And that's worth sitting with for a second because you didn't mean to do that to it, but you did. Sign 4 is the one you can see with your own eyes just by looking at the squirrel's body. A healthy backyard squirrel has a defined, athletic shape, visible muscle along the haunches, a coat that lies relatively flat and clean. A peanut-heavy diet, being so calorically dense and fat-loaded, can lead to noticeable weight gain that isn't muscle, it's just fat, sitting oddly around the belly and hips in a way wild squirrels foraging naturally rarely develop, because natural foraging burns calories the whole squirrel diet doesn't hand back in excess. Wildlife rehab centers frequently note that overweight squirrels brought in for unrelated injuries often show signs of poor bone density on examination, a direct consequence of a diet too heavy in fat and phosphorus and too light in calcium, since peanuts skew that ratio badly. Try this tomorrow. Just watch your squirrel move. Is it still quick and light across the fence line? Or does it seem heavier, slower to climb, landing a little clumsier than it used to? That shift in agility isn't age most of the time. It's diet. And coming up, signs 5 and 6 get into something even more physical, something you might already be seeing in your squirrel's legs and teeth, and just chalking up to normal squirrel behavior when it isn't. Sign 5 lies in the teeth, and this one surprises almost everyone. Squirrel teeth grow continuously their entire lives, and gnawing on hard, varied, natural foods like nut still in their shells, tree bark, and harder forage is what keeps them worn down to a manageable length. Shelled peanuts, which is what most people put out, require almost no gnawing effort at all. Wildlife veterinarians who specialize in rodents have pointed to overgrown incisors as one of the more common and preventable problems they see in backyard-fed squirrels, a problem that can eventually make it painful or even impossible for the animal to eat at all if it goes unaddressed. Try this yourself. Next time your squirrel is at the feeder, watch its mouth for a few seconds. Are the teeth still short, straight, and evenly worn, or do they look longer than you remember, maybe slightly curved? That small visual check takes 5 seconds, and it can tell you something about that squirrel's future that you genuinely can't know any other way from a distance. Sign 6 is quieter, and it's the one that gets missed because it looks like nothing at all. Your squirrel starts caching less. Squirrels are natural scatter hoarders, burying food across dozens or even hundreds of locations to survive lean months, especially winter. It's one of the most important survival behaviors they have, and it's deeply tied to varied, natural food sources that store well underground. Peanuts, handed out fresh and frequently, short-circuit that instinct, because why bury something for later when there's a reliable pile showing up every single day? Wildlife agencies that track urban and suburban squirrel populations have noted that supplementally fed squirrels often show reduced caching behavior compared to their fully wild counterparts, a shift that becomes dangerous the moment that supplemental feeding stops, whether because you moved, got busy, or simply forgot for a stretch of bad weather. Try this tomorrow. Watch for a few minutes after you feed. Is your squirrel burying any of what you gave it, or just eating on the spot and coming back for more? If it's not burying anything at all anymore, that instinct has gone quiet, and a quiet instinct in a wild animal is never really a good sign. It just means the danger's been postponed. Sign 7 shows up in how your squirrel treats other squirrels now, and it's honestly one of the saddest ones to watch once you notice it. Wild squirrels do have territory and do compete over food. That's completely normal. But a peanut-fixated squirrel at a reliable feeding spot often becomes noticeably more aggressive and possessive than that baseline, chasing off others fast and hard, sometimes even smaller or younger squirrels who genuinely need the food more. Wildlife rehabilitators have described this exact escalation in habituated animals, a shift from typical territorial behavior into something closer to resource guarding, the kind of intensity you'd expect around scarcity. Except there's no scarcity here. There's a bag in your garage. Try this yourself. Watch what happens the next time 2 squirrels show up at once. Is there a quick, normal chase and redistribution? Or does your regular squirrel go after the other one aggressively, repeatedly, well past the point where the other squirrel has already backed off? That extra intensity is the habit talking, not the squirrel's actual nature. And it's worth noticing because it means the dependency isn't just affecting your squirrel anymore. It's rippling out into the whole little community living around your yard. And then there's sign 8, and this one's different from the rest because it's less about a behavior and more about a quiet responsibility that's already sitting in your hands whether you've noticed it or not. If you made it this far in this list and you're realizing your squirrel checks off 4, 5, 6 of these signs, there's no need to panic and there's definitely no need for guilt. You started feeding that animal because you care about it. That's the whole reason any of this matters to you at all. But somewhere along the way, a habit of giving that squirrel comfort and reliability slowly turned into something that's actually working against its own biology. And that squirrel doesn't know that it can't know that it just knows the door creaks and the peanuts show up. That's the strange, quiet weight of feeding any wild creature that depends on you even a little. You become part of its internal map of survival, whether or not you meant to. And what wildlife veterinarians and rehabilitators consistently agree on across nearly every published feeding guideline aimed at backyard wildlife is genuinely simple once you hear it. Peanuts shell on in small amounts as an occasional supplement, alongside a genuinely varied diet. The squirrel is still actively foraging for itself. That's what real care looks like. Not a daily ritual the squirrel organizes its whole existence around. Real care means that squirrel could disappear from your yard for a week and come back completely fine because its survival was never actually dependent on you in the first place. You were just a nice part of its life, not the center of it. That's the whole difference between feeding a squirrel and actually taking care of one. So here's what I want to know from you. Down in the comments, tell me what your squirrel does the second you step outside, or better yet, drop a photo of your regular yard visitor so we can all see who we're talking about today. And if even one of these 8 signs hit a little too close to home, send this to someone else who feeds their backyard squirrels too, because chances are their squirrels doing the exact same thing yours is, and they probably don't know it yet either. This has been NutriPause, and we'll see you in your squirrel next time.